In Chapter 1, we're going to talk to you about tool preparation and the importance of some of the safety equipment that we've laid out here. We've got pretty much all the tools that you're going to need to build the Recluse laid out here in a pile. We'll go over them really quickly now, and then later on, as we need those individual tools, we'll go over in more depth how to use each tool and how they apply. But first of all, I'd like to talk about safety. Safety glasses are a must. We're working with metal, we're cutting metal, we're welding it, we're grinding it. There's a lot of hot pieces of little metal, and the eye protection is going to be so valuable. It's our #1 tool. Please have it in your toolbox. Have 2 or 3 of them. Good items to have. Second is gloves. The metal comes from the factory with a small amount of oil on it, and it's very black, very dirty. And these are really cheap. Gardening gloves are good for handling metal. They don't have a lot of extra cotton and stuff that comes off onto your items, so they're just good gloves to have. You can pick up a 3-pack for like $2 or whatever at your local hardware store. So grab a package of these. Use these when you're handling the metal. It'll make all your cleanup easier. It'll make everything go a lot smoother on your cleanup. And the last thing on our safety item is fire extinguisher. It's good to have around. You're welding, like I said, hot metal. It can touch a piece of wood and ignite into flames like that. Pieces of paper you have laying around might blow onto your metal. Just have one laying around. At least have a bucket of water or something that you can put on a fire if something happens. When you start working with your metal, you're going to need, of course, measuring devices. You're going to need angle devices to find the right angles to cut and to mark. Metal is kind of a hard item to mark on, so what we use are silver Sharpies. They mark well. You can see it later. Leaves a good, sharp, clean line on your metal. Nice to have some of those laying around. This is an angle grinder. You can either use a grinding wheel or a cutting wheel on these. They're very handy to have around if you need to get a small cut in somewhere. Grinding, you can also get a wire wheel for them. Just very, very handy to have. Drills, any kind of drill except a hand drill, because we're drilling through metals, so it's going to take a little bit. We like using a drill press, but if you have a hand drill you can use it. It's just harder to get the angles straight. We'll go over more of the drilling techniques when we get to that section of the DVD. The drill bits go along with that. Local hardware store, once again, you can get those there. Need to get metal bits, not wood bits. Make sure that they're set up for drilling in metal or you'll have a big problem. When you start putting the metal together, you're going to need clamps to hold the metal so that you can weld it. You don't want to be holding that little spot where you're welding with your hand. Your gloves will catch on fire, you'll make a big mess. So there's some really nifty little clamps you can get. Pick some up. This is a small version. This is a more expensive, fancier version that allows you to run your metal all the way through and then have a 90 straight into it so you can do some welding there. Don't worry about getting the clamps messed up. That's what they're for. If you get a little bit of weld on them, a little bit of metal on them, that's okay. You can discard them and get another one rather than burning a finger. Some of the quick grips are handy to have around. C-clamps, quick grips, vice grips, any of that kind of stuff that you can use as another set of hands. It's very handy to have once we start assembling the go-kart, putting it all together. This is what we use for cutting our metal here in the shop. It's a chop saw. You can pick these up anywhere from $100 on up, $100 to $400. They're very handy to have. They make it easy. You have a clamp in here to hold the metal. Very handy to have. You can also use a hacksaw if you have that. If you don't have access to one of these, you can do a hacksaw. It just takes a little bit more elbow grease and a little bit more work, but it can be done. Once you start assembling the go-kart, of course you'll need normal tools, screwdrivers, ratchets, crescent wrenches, any sort of wrenches that you have laying around the house. Hammers will come in handy, and we'll need all of those once we start the final assembly, putting the motor on, mounting the brakes, the axles, that sort of thing. The welder. This is a $350, $400 welder you can pick up. They go all the way up to, thousands of dollars. Here on your right, there's a grinder that we use just for touching up the edges. When you cut the metal, it has sharp edges, so we use the grinder to clean up those edges and make them a little safer to work with the metal, so you don't have sharp edges and cutting yourself. Anyway, that's a quick overview of the tools that we'll be using throughout this DVD. If you can round these up, if you have these, you can round them up, collect them, get them on a workbench somewhere, and get ready for the next section.